Good morning, Bix Weir, roadtoruta.com with your morning news, your morning Horn of Z's. Horn of Z's is sip of coffee, if you don't know what that word means. Z's is coffee in a language called Buntling, Northern California. Bizarre little language invented in the late 1800s. Anyway, go back to videos if you want to learn more about that. But today we have a really exciting announcement. Well, actually, it was yesterday. Puerto Rico has filed for bankruptcy officially. The creditors actually sued Puerto Rico and forced them into bankruptcy. So that's $70 billion that will have to go through a bankruptcy process, which means write-downs for the hedge funds that held the muni debt of Puerto Rico. Is it a big deal? Yeah, it is a big deal. This goes way back. If you think about it, Detroit was an $18 billion bankruptcy and restructuring. But because Puerto Rico is a commonwealth, they're not allowed to declare bankruptcy according to the law. But who follows the law these days? Let's just take a look at this article. Interesting, today is March 4th, a military day, get it? March 4th. And yeah, there's protests all over the place. You name it, you can protest it these days. This is Puerto Rico. Article says, Puerto Rico has done what no American state or territory has done before. It is essentially seeking bankruptcy relief. The island is petitioning for relief under a federal law for insolvent territories called PROMESA, which contains certain bankruptcy provisions but also recognizes that Puerto Rico, a commonwealth of the United States, is not part of any state and must be treated like a sovereign nation in some ways. The scale of Puerto Rico's debt is also unusual. It has about $123 billion in debt and pension obligations. For comparison, Detroit had $18 billion of debt in 2013. Any relief could eventually help the island return to solvency. Well, any country will be solvent if they are given bankruptcy protection and allowed to spend money and not pay their creditors. I don't know how you would call that solvency. But yeah, you write off all their debt. Even the United States can return to solvency if and when the monetary system crashes and all that debt is gone. Anyway, before then, however, government workers will have to forego pension payments, which will piss off the population unbelievably, while public health and infrastructure projects will go unfunded. The brain drain could intensify as well. I got a buddy living in Puerto Rico, so hope he's doing all right. I texted him the other day about a visit. I hope I can still go visit him, but who knows what's going on with their bankruptcy. Actually, the bankruptcy is probably good for the people because it's the bankers and the people invested in the muni bonds that were paying high dividends that will lose out. And a lot of hedge funds were invested in Puerto Rico, so expect to see hedge fund redemptions quicken and start to be bigger and bigger over the weeks and months ahead. This is just one of many things going on right now. Remember that. The next step is for the Supreme Court to designate a bankruptcy judge to handle the case. The coming court proceeding, and it's going to be an ugly bankruptcy because the laws aren't exactly cut and dry for what's going to go on with a commonwealth going bankrupt. The coming court proceedings mean that the island's creditors, whose lawsuits prompted the request for relief, are likely to receive far less of their money back. Those creditors had already been shocked by a fiscal plan this year that allowed only $800 million a year to pay principal and interest on Puerto Rico's bond debt, instead of the roughly $3.5 billion it would cost to make the payments on time. Some are now furious about the move. Oh, what did you expect? You got paid a higher rate because there was a riskier investment and it didn't work out for you. The Commonwealth's proposal is not credible. A credible starting point for negotiations. Andrew Rosenberg of Paul Weiss, Rifkind, Wharton, and Garrison, an advisor to the ad hoc group of general obligation bondholders of Puerto Rico. The ad hoc group, all capitalized, that's the name of it. We're going to call our group not criminal hedge funds and banksters. We're going to call it an ad hoc group. Puerto Rico has become a cautionary tale for states and municipalities facing similar strains like Illinois and Philadelphia, and many will be watching to see whether others will take a similar path. Yeah, all the states are going bankrupt. Illinois is a classic. They promise everything to their employees, their state employees, and when they can't pay for it, what do? It's either take haircuts on their pension plans and retirement benefits and all that, or file bankruptcy. The reality is the system is bankrupt. Unless it keeps growing, it's not going to be sustainable. And you're going to see Illinois go. You're going to see Philadelphia go. You're going to see all those cities and states that are insolvent, which is basically every single one of them, go by the wayside. And this is kind of the first look at how a bankruptcy loss will be handled. And there'll be a lot more of this, a lot more. Anyway, so I did a lot of work on Puerto Rico the first time they were getting in trouble, 2014, 15, 16. They've been in trouble for a long time, and it's always kick the can, kick the can, kick the can. Well, the can has not been kicked anymore. They officially declared bankruptcy, so they're not paying their debts, and it's up to a judge in the court to figure out if it will work going forward. I don't think it will. I think it's a long, drawn-out process. The holders of the debt might as well say, see you later to that debt. A large chunk of it will never get paid off. Most likely, all of it will never get paid off. But what I did is I went into the Road to Ruta archives, and I found, so I typed, you guys all, if you have any questions about what went on in the past 15 years of silver manipulation, gold manipulation, go to the Road to Ruta archives. Right here is a search button, and you can search for any topic you want. I searched for Puerto Rico. Got a whole bunch of hits on it. This is from a Friday road trip, a private road article on 8/22/2015. And, of course, it talks about silver, perfectly aligned to destroy the system. It talks about Ted Butler. And here's an interesting, it talks about Puerto Rico later on in this. But here's an interesting article. A lot of people ask me, well, what do you mean when you say that if the system crashes, the FDIC is going to have to pay out the derivatives first? I don't know where that law is. You just say that big, so you don't know what you're talking about. So I went back to 2015. Here it is, right here. America's $3 billion ounce silver booby trap set to blow in 2015. I've been wondering why Citibank was allowed to increase of $50 billion worth of silver derivatives, as reported in the first quarter 2015 of the Office of Comptroller of Currencies. They could have easily continued to keep this position unrecorded. Off the books position was likely done for the past 40 years, but this year they decided to put it back on the books. Why? That's the games behind the scenes in the derivative position. As you can see on Table 9, the total precious metal all, which is precious metals, but gold and mostly silver, 99%. Held by Citigroup changes from $3.9 billion in the fourth quarter of 2014 to $53.0 billion in the first quarter of 2015. That's the way the game is played. When the regulators go into JP Morgan, they'll give their short position to Citigroup for a week, the week at the end of the quarter, so they can report it, and then they send it over to Bank of America, and then they send it back to JP Morgan. That's how the hot potatoes passed around in the silver short derivatives. And then, of course, there's no explanation. But here's what, of course, I was going through it, and this is what was added to the Dodd-Frank bill that makes sure that the FDIC does have to pay out derivatives before they pay out MON, PAWS, savings account, checking account. Billions in derivatives. And it goes back to right here. Citigroup wrote the Wall Street giveaway the House just approved. A year ago, Mother Jones reported that a bill that would allow banks like Citigroup to do more high-risk trading with taxpayer-backed money was written almost entirely by Citigroup lobbyists. The bill passed the House in October 2013, but the Senate never voted on it. For months, it was dead. Yet on Tuesday night, the Citi-written bill resurfaced. Lawmakers snuck the measure into a massive 11th-hour government funding bill that congressional leaders negotiated in hopes of averting a government shutdown. Where have we heard that before? President Barack Obama is expected to sign the legislation, which he did. The Citi-drafted legislation will benefit 5 of the largest banks in the country: Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. These financial institutions control more than 90% of the $700 trillion derivative market. If this measure becomes law, these banks will be able to use FDIC insured money to bet on nearly anything they want. And if there's another economic downturn, they can count on taxpayer bailout of their derivatives trading business. House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi blasted out a statement Wednesday morning slamming the provision for allowing big banks to gamble with money insured by the FDIC. And Senator Elizabeth Warren is calling on the House to strike the city-written language from the spending bill. I am disgusted, Republican Representative Maxine Waters, the ranking Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, said in a statement. Congress is risking our homes, our jobs, and retirement savings once again. And then I said, just what was the language added by Citigroup that pissed off so many people? It was all about swaps, my friend, derivative swaps. As in the silver swaps that would be added to the OCC report the very next quarter. Amazing. It's all about the swaps. So Citi adds $50 billion in swaps as soon as they get legislation passed that covered the swaps, covered the FDIC, covered by the FDIC insurance. And then they give a breakdown of the Citibank draft and the final bill, and it is word for word. Look at the highlighted areas here. Only bona fide hedging and traditional bank activity permitted, except for hedging and other similar risk mitigating activities directly related to covered depository institutions' activities. Okay, so that's all the big banks. Acting as swaps entity for swaps or security-based swaps other than a structured finance swap, unless such structured finance swap is undertaken for hedging or risk management purposes. You can say anything is hedging and risk management purposes, because hedging, it doesn't mean you're hedging a actual physical asset. You could be hedging a different derivative. You could be using a swap to hedge another swap. And that's why the derivative market is so big. And then they say each asset-backed security underlying such structured finance is of a credit quality and of a type or category with respect to which the prudential regulators have jointly adopted rules authorizing swap or security-based swap activity by covered depository institution. All that language is the exact same. The final bill is on the right there, and that bill to the language to the left is what the Citigroup lawyers wrote, and the final bill came out word for word. And what it does, it takes a huge chunk of derivatives and puts it under FDIC insurance. And it also makes sure in the Dodd-Frank law that the banks are paid out first because they need to be protected, and they call it a wind down provision. Well, when you wind down a big bank that is knee-deep in criminal derivatives, it's called a bailout provision. And that's exactly what is put into the Dodd-Frank law. It is exactly what will happen in Congress now. So instead of, like I've been saying, it's not going to be a $700 billion bailout when they come to Congress this year, when the banks come to Congress. It's going to be a $20, $30, $40, $50 trillion bailout package, basically ensuring that there will be no bailout. It's a brilliant way to go about it, and it's a way to make sure that the system is not saved. So that's the language of that law. All right, real quick, we'll run down a couple zero hedge things because I think the world is really getting to that point. I said it would get worse and worse and worse, and it is definitely getting worse and worse and worse. Ryan sets do or die House vote on Obamacare. The healthcare system, Obamacare, the new Trump care, Trump's basically going to put his name on a failing piece of legislation that he can no longer blame Obamacare. If you think about it, everything after this bill gets passed, everything that happens in the healthcare arena is going to be blamed on Trump because it's his bill. That can you imagine what the Democrats are going to do? Every single problem with Obamacare is now a Trump care problem. So why would Trump do it? I think something needs to be in place for the transition, for the crash of the monetary system and the rebuilding of a new system, something more along the lines of universal health care. So I do think it will pass at some point. I don't know about right now, but it is is definitely not a good bill. It's definitely going to be destructive to our nation cost-wise and every otherwise, unless the system falls apart and all of a sudden everybody has free health care because everybody's got the no more debt. The debt will be gone after the banking system crashes. It sounds great to have no debt, but all your assets will be gone too. So it's just crazy chaos is on our way. So be ready for it. So yeah, I think it might pass, but the Trump problem is now his name's on it, and the Democrats will going to be attacking the healthcare issue, and they're not going to attack. Trump would be, if he was smart or not doing it for a different reason, he would just leave it in place and let it crash the Obama way, because Obama will be blamed and all the Democrats will be blamed. Right now, if he passes this, the Republicans and he will be blamed for the imploding healthcare system, which it will implode, and this new bill does nothing to save that. But I think it's a big part of getting something in place before the collapse of the economic system. Apple is now the world's largest bond fund. Of its record $257 billion in cash, Apple has invested $148 billion, or 58% in corporate debt alone, according to the company's latest 10Q. That would make it the biggest fixed income mutual fund, bigger than Vanguard. Apple's a monster, a gigantic monster, and Apple's interesting. I think they're knee deep in Bitcoin and they're not telling anybody. I think Apple, the plan before Steve Jobs left was to incorporate something, they call it Apple Pay now, which is, basically a credit card type of thing. Very easy to convert that into a Bitcoin functionality on an Apple iPhone. I think they're working with a company called 21 Inc. to put Bitcoin miners on every single Apple iPhone. That would be a huge jump for Apple. And they're looking for that one thing to change, another big innovation. If they put a Bitcoin mining chip on every single iPhone that mines micro amounts of Bitcoin, you can say, oh my God, the new Apple has arrived. And Apple, with all that cash, buy silver. You're not going to be able to get silver for your iPhones, after the crash, after the manipulation ends. Spend a couple billion and buy the rest of the silver supply out there. They might be doing that on the sly behind the scenes, but Apple is going to have a hard time with the reliability of their computer components and their phone components if silver is not available. So, hey, Apple, spend 10 or 20 billion on silver and try to get all the physical you can get. Go buy J.P. Morgan's physical silver and get it out of the hands of the criminal. Jobless claims. If you look at the news now, everything's bad. Everything's bad, but the stock market's still up. That's Steve Mnuchin's computer rigging. Way to go, Steve. March trade deficit shrinks to smallest since October. U.S. productivity plunges in first quarter. It's amazing. It's like bam, bam, bam. And everybody says, oh my God, but the stock market's fine, so I don't have to worry about things. Stock market's being artificially held up. And when that artificial support dies, like it did in 2008, you could say, crash, see you later. Trump rages, fake news media is officially out of control. Everything is officially out of control in the media these days. You don't know what's fake, what's real. Trump is the one to talk. He says one thing and then he says the exact opposite the next day. Everybody is off balance. Nobody knows what's real and what's fake anymore. As part of the plan. I think it's part of the overall plan. Definitely part of Trump's negotiating strategy. Nobody knows where he is. What is Trump doing? What's really going on behind the scenes? We don't know. But I guarantee you, it's the good guys taking out these bad guys, and the media will go away. They're knee deep in the problems with pedophilia and all that stuff. So it's going to be an interesting time coming forward when the banks crash and the truth comes out about who we are in the universe, what was done to us in the past, how we've been mind controlled by the media and the people that control the media. How the education system has been set up. There's so many things that need to be brought out into the open, and I think they will. I think they are, slowly but surely. And right now, the fake news meme, which got turned around, the bad guys and the media tried to use fake news against the good guys and what they were doing, and Trump was brilliant in turning that right back around on. Now he says, every time he says fake news, it gets associated with either the stuff the alt media is saying or the mainstream media, because the Trump administration keeps labeling it fake news. That's fake news, fake news. So nobody knows what that meme means anymore. And here we go. Brent crude drops below $50 after Russian comments, sliding demand forecast. Brent crude is determined with the same mouse click in the basement of the Treasury as gold and silver. So for some reason, I think I know the reason, they're driving the price of oil down. If you go to the Banking Basics publication from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, they talk about a situation. They call it Gusher National Bank goes bankrupt. Yes, the good guys are trying to bankrupt the banks that lend into the oil and gas field. And it's very easy to do. It's very highly intensive industry as far as capital. Very capital intensive. They need a lot of capital for drilling rigs, offshore rigs, onshore rigs. The onshore rig boom and bust is it happens like clockwork whenever the price of oil or gas drops below a certain level. So yes, Steve Mnuchin's driving the price of crude down, crashing all commodities. That's his plan to weaken the dollar. Because remember, because it got set up in the 1970s by Kissinger that oil had to be sold in U.S. dollars, it created artificial demand for the U.S. dollar. And the amount of oil that is bought and sold every year is around $3 trillion. So countries need to hold the U.S. dollar in reserve to pay for that oil. That's the whole thing about the petrodollar. That's what the petrodollar really means. It doesn't mean that the Saudi sheiks are spending money that was made by oil. The petrodollar is all about the artificial demand of the U.S. dollar. Marine Le Pen slams Macron. France will be governed by a woman, either me or Madame Merkel. Oh, that's a good call. That's a good one. So yeah, France is the next hotspot for I think the election's coming up this weekend. If Le Pen wins, bravo to the people. She wants to get out of the euro, and this guy Macron works for the Rothschilds, or worked for the Rothschilds. It's a no-brainer, but there's a lot of market rigging. Do the good guys have the power of the electronic voting machines under their grasp like they did in the U.S. and the U.K.? I think they do. I think the good guys are going to put Le Pen in and let the pieces fall where they may, and it will continue. The revolution continues. La révolution. The French love a good revolution. Iron ore prices are crashing. All commodity prices are crashing because Steve Mnuchin is hitting that little button in his mouse in the basement of the Treasury. That's what Steve Mnuchin's job is: rig the markets. Russian embassy is the UK is now blaming the Russian embassy on influence their votes. So the Russian embassy is voting. Wait a minute, no. This is the UK was blaming Europe, the EU, for trolling and screwing up their Brexit situation. And then the UK embassy tweets out, "Praise God, it's not Russia this time." The world is getting crazy. Absolutely insane. And of course, S&P futures jump ahead of the GOP healthcare vote. Why do they even give a news title to the reason that the Dow and the S&P move up or down? It's all done with the computer. It's all done with the click of a mouse. It's ridiculous. How many times have I heard gold goes up on the threat of war? And then it says the next week, gold goes down on the threat of war. It's like they use the same language to say a reason why gold went up or down, a commodity went up or down. They just make this stuff up out of thin air, and because people want reasons. They don't want to hear the S&P went up because Steve Mnuchin clicked the mouse in the basement of the Treasury. They want to hear that the S&P went up because health care is going to be taken care of and there's no more problem with that. What are you talking about? Of course there's a problem with it. It didn't even change that much from Obamacare. Is it time to stop worrying about the euro? Remember, currencies trade only in relation to each other and to gold. So whether or not the dollar goes up or down is all dependent upon what other currencies are doing. Everything's in relation to another currency, and then gold is the outlier, and they control the price of gold. So yeah, the dollar might go up or down, and we can print as much money as we want because we have the control of the computers. Kyle Bass warns all hell's about to break loose in China. China's credit system expanded too recklessly and too quickly, and it's beginning to unravel, warns Heyman Capital's Kyle Bass. As soon as liabilities have problems, meaning the depositors decide not to roll their holdings, all hell breaks loose. Yes, China's on the path of the good guys to destroy the system. They're all working together to pull the plug, and the plugs are being pulled every which way now. If Le Pen gets voted in as the president of France, you're going to see a lot of turmoil in Europe, as well as there should be, because there's got to be turmoil all over the place for this big transition to happen. China's plan to subvert the global dollar standard. The instability brought into the geopolitical equation by the Trump presidency and the early signs the U.S. economy is grinding to a halt under the sheer weight of consumer and government debt are increasingly likely to prompt China and Russia into firm action, financial action, if only to protect themselves in an unstable financial monetary environment. Yeah, I mean, they're already doing transactions between each other outside of the SWIFT system, which is the bankster controlled system. I think it's the CIA controls the SWIFT system. Theoretically, it's the Federal Reserve that controls the SWIFT system. And the SWIFT system is what's used to transfer money between countries. Trillions and trillions and quadrillions of different currencies go through there. And that's where the ultimate rigging happens. All right, that's it for today. This is Big Weir, roadtoroota.com. Make sure you like and subscribe. Very important, subscribe. I'm putting a few of these out there every day. There's so much going on behind the scenes in this takedown and transition back to a gold standard. It's going to be exciting, and it is exciting, and it looks crazy out there, but it's all being done for a reason and a purpose. There are hiccups along the way. There have been for decades, but we will get there. Ruta will rule the day, and the monetary system will be destroyed, erasing all electronic debt, which is our big problem, and then we will return to some form of sane monetary policy that includes gold and maybe silver. Silver might be too valuable for that, and then most likely Bitcoin as well. So get your Bitcoin, get your gold, but mainly get your physical silver in your own possession. We'll talk to you later.